November 1939. £2.1 million invested in HMS Belfast, the Royal Navy's newest town-class cruiser, lasted precisely 4 months before a German magnetic mine broke her back off the Firth of Forth. The ship that should have gone straight to scrap instead received £5.5 million in repairs and upgrades, more than twice her original construction cost. 24 years later, Belfast would become the only major Royal Navy warship from the Second World War preserved for the nation. This is the economics of how one cruiser cost 3 times a destroyer flotilla to build, justified every pound through combat effectiveness, and survived long enough to become the last big-gun cruiser anybody could visit. Belfast represented maximum investment under treaty constraints. The 1930 London Naval Treaty capped light cruisers at 10,000 tons with guns no larger than 6.1 inches. Every navy tried maximizing firepower within that limit. Japan's Mogami class mounted 15 6-inch guns. America's Brooklyn class mounted 15 6-inch guns. Britain needed equivalent firepower, but couldn't match 15 guns per ship economically. The Admiralty's solution? Town-class cruisers mounting 12 6-inch guns in 4 triple turrets, armoured to withstand 8-inch shell hits, capable of 32 knots, designed for long-range trade protection. Belfast and her sister Edinburgh were the improved version, longer, heavier, better armoured than earlier towns. Construction at Harland and Wolff began December 1936. Expected cost £2,141,514. The guns cost £75,000. The aircraft £66,500. Everything else £2 million. This was expensive. A standard destroyer cost perhaps £500,000. Belfast cost the same as 4 destroyers. But destroyers couldn't engage enemy cruisers. Belfast could fight surface battles, escort convoys, bombard shore targets, provide anti-aircraft protection. Missions requiring capability no cheaper vessel could deliver. August 1939. Belfast commissioned just before war outbreak. Initial assignment, Northern Patrol, enforcing blockade against Germany. Early success, captured German liner SS Cap Norte, disguised as Swedish vessel, full of German reservists trying to reach home. The £2.1 million investment looked sound. Proper cruiser doing proper cruiser work. November 21st, 1939. Belfast departed Firth of Forth for patrol duty. At 1100 hours, she hit a German magnetic mine. The explosion didn't sink her immediately, but the damage assessment was catastrophic. The keel was distorted and pushed upward. Half the frames were deformed. The turbines were torn from their foundations. The ship's back was broken. Initial evaluation, total loss, send to scrap. The £2.1 million investment had lasted 4 months operational service. But naval architects examined the damage and reached a different conclusion. Yes, Belfast's structure was severely damaged. Yes, repairs would be extensive and expensive, but the hull plating had only one small hole. The ship could be saved and modernized simultaneously. The question became economic. Was a broken 4-month-old cruiser worth massive repair investment? The Royal Navy calculated yes. Cruisers took years to build. Replacing Belfast meant waiting until 1945 minimum for equivalent capability. Repairing and upgrading Belfast meant getting improved capabilities back by 1942. The decision: invest whatever necessary to return Belfast to service. Devonport Dockyard, November 1939 to November 1942. Belfast underwent complete reconstruction for 28 months. The damaged structure was repaired. The armour layout was modified to better withstand mine shockwaves. The anti-aircraft armament was strengthened significantly. Radar stations were mounted throughout. Fire control systems were completely modernised. Belfast emerged from repair as effectively a new ship incorporating 3 years of wartime technological advancement. Total repair cost approximately £5.5 million. Combined with original construction cost, £7.6 million total invested in one cruiser. This was extraordinary economics. £7.6 million could have built 15 destroyers or 38 corvettes, but none of those could do what Belfast now could: fight surface battles with advanced radar fire control, defend Arctic convoys against battle cruisers, provide heavy shore bombardment support. The investment calculus depended entirely on deploying Belfast, where expensive capability justified expensive ship. November 1942. Belfast, recommissioned, became flagship of 10th Cruiser Squadron under Rear Admiral Robert Burnett. Assignment: Arctic convoys to Soviet Union. This was the mission that would validate the £7.6 million investment. German battleship Tirpitz, battlecruisers Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, and heavy cruisers threatened every Arctic convoy. The Royal Navy needed cruisers with firepower, armour, radar and endurance to escort convoys through the Norwegian Sea in winter. Belfast had exactly this capability. Throughout 1943, Belfast escorted Arctic convoys, provided anti-aircraft cover, conducted offensive sweeps. The £7.6 million cruiser operating in conditions that would destroy lesser vessels, protecting convoys worth millions more than her own cost. December the 25th, 1943. German battlecruiser Scharnhorst departed Altenfjord, Norway, with 5 destroyers to attack Arctic convoy JW55B. British intelligence intercepted the signals. Admiral Bruce Fraser in battleship HMS Duke of York moved to intercept. Burnett's Force 1, Belfast, Norfolk, Sheffield positioned between Scharnhorst and the convoy. The trap was set. Scharnhorst was worth perhaps £30 million to build, displaced 32,000 tons, mounted 9 11-inch guns, could outrun any British battleship. If Scharnhorst reached the convoy, the destruction would be catastrophic. But Scharnhorst had to get past Belfast first. December 26, 1943, 0840 hours. Belfast's Type 273 radar detected Scharnhorst at 35,000 yards in complete darkness and snowstorm. This was exactly the technological advantage the £7.6 million investment had bought. Scharnhorst's radar was destroyed in the earlier engagement, leaving the battlecruiser effectively blind. Belfast had perfect radar picture, advanced fire control, flashless cordite preventing muzzle flash detection. At 0921 hours, Belfast illuminated Scharnhorst with star shells. Norfolk opened fire at 13,000 yards. Belfast and Sheffield engaged. First salvo from Norfolk destroyed Scharnhorst's forward radar, making the battlecruiser completely blind in Arctic darkness. Scharnhorst turned south, attempting escape. Belfast maintained radar contact continuously. At noon, Scharnhorst tried circling back toward the convoy. Belfast detected the move immediately, guided cruisers back into firing position. The engagement resumed. Norfolk took 2 11-inch hits, losing a turret and her radar. Sheffield suffered engine problems. Belfast alone maintained contact. The £7.6 million cruiser tracking a £30 million battlecruiser through Arctic night using radar technology that justified every pound of investment cost. Belfast's constant position reports guided Duke of York into perfect interception position. At 16:17 hours, Duke of York obtained radar contact. At 16:47 hours, Belfast fired star shells illuminating Scharnhorst for Duke of York's guns. The battleship engaged at 12,000 yards, scoring immediate hits. Scharnhorst tried running south. Belfast pursued from the north, Duke of York from the west, Jamaica from the south, destroyers closing for torpedo attacks. At 19:45 hours, Scharnhorst capsized and sank. Of 1,968 crew, 36 survived. British losses: 11 killed, 11 wounded. The strategic accounting was decisive. Belfast's £7.6 million investment had helped eliminate Germany's last operational capital ship threat in northern waters. Scharnhorst's construction had cost Germany £30 million. Her sinking freed entire British home fleet formations for other duties. The return on investment immeasurable. One expensive cruiser with advanced radar and disciplined deployment had validated every aspect of the Town-class design philosophy. June 6, 1944. Belfast led Bombardment Force E, supporting Gold and Juno beaches during D-Day. At 05:27 hours, Belfast opened fire with full broadside against German battery at La Marefontaine. The bombardment cut telephone lines to the forward observation post, blinding the battery. Belfast's guns couldn't be observed from the battery position inland, so without the observation post providing corrections, the German guns couldn't fire effectively. Belfast fired 4,000 6-inch shells and 1,000 4-inch shells over 33 days, supporting the Normandy landings. The invasion's success depended on naval gunfire eliminating German coastal defences before troops landed. Heavy cruisers like Belfast provided firepower no smaller vessel could deliver, sustained accurate bombardment from 12-mile range with fire control sophisticated enough to avoid hitting friendly forces. Belfast's presence at both Battle of North Cape and D-Day demonstrated the economic logic of expensive cruisers. Cheaper ships couldn't fight Scharnhorst. Cheaper ships couldn't provide sustained heavy bombardment. The missions requiring expensive capability justified expensive ships. August 1945. Belfast sailed for Far East to join British Pacific Fleet, arrived Sydney shortly before Japan's surrender. Post-war assignment, repatriate Allied prisoners of war from Japanese camps, peacekeeping duties in Asia. The cruiser that cost £7.6 million continued earning returns through missions requiring heavy warship presence. 1950 to 1952, Korean War. Belfast joined UN naval forces, operated independently conducting coastal bombardments, supporting ground troops. The war was primarily land-based, but Korea's geography meant naval gunfire could reach deep inland along the coasts. Belfast's 12 6-inch guns provided artillery support that field guns couldn't match. Longer range, heavier shells, sustained firing capability, mobility to reposition along the entire coastline. Belfast fired 8,000 6-inch shells during 2 years' Korean service. So many rounds, the gun barrels wore out and required replacement. She steamed 80,000 miles in the combat zone. Only one crewman was killed by enemy fire, a 75mm shell hit during bombardment of Walsall Island Battery. Belfast's Korean service demonstrated that expensive platforms deployed correctly achieve returns throughout their service life. The £7.6 million invested 1936 to 1942 was still generating value in 1952, Korea 1956 to 1959. Final major modernization. Cost £5.5 million additional investment. Enclosed bridge added, new lattice masts installed, radar systems completely upgraded, 6 twin 40mm Bofors mountings fitted with radar control. Total Belfast investment by 1959, £13.1 million. This was staggering economics, the cost of 26 destroyers invested in one cruiser. But Belfast now had capabilities no destroyer possessed: modern radar, automated anti-aircraft fire control, extensive command and control facilities, endurance for extended deployments. The investment kept Belfast relevant through the 1950s, when most World War II cruisers were scrapping. 1963. Belfast paid off, entered reserve. By then, manpower-intensive cruisers were excessively costly to operate. The Royal Navy was transitioning to guided missiles and smaller crews. Belfast's mission set surface warfare with big guns, Arctic convoy escort, shore bombardment was ending. The age of the gun cruiser was finished. 1967. Imperial War Museum investigated preserving a World War II cruiser. Most British warships had already been scrapped. Belfast was in reserve, relatively intact, with distinguished service record. Rear Admiral Sir Morgan Giles, Belfast's former captain, led the campaign for preservation. The government initially planned scrapping. Morgan Giles and the HMS Belfast Trust fought the decision. The argument: Belfast was the last surviving example of Britain's major World War II surface combatants. She represented the Royal Navy at its most powerful, participated in the war's most significant naval actions, embodied British naval engineering at its peak. Scrapping Belfast meant losing tangible connection to that history forever. October 21st, 1971. Belfast opened to the public in the Pool of London. The first Royal Navy ship preserved for the nation since HMS Victory. The £13.1 million investment in Belfast's construction, repair and modernisation had generated combat value from 1939 to 1963. Now Belfast would generate educational and historical value indefinitely. The economics of preservation versus scrapping. Scrap value, perhaps £100,000. Historical value, immeasurable. Belfast became one of only 3 surviving D-Day bombardment vessels. She's the last major Royal Navy World War II warship. She's the only remaining town-class cruiser. Visiting Belfast today means seeing the last big gun cruiser anybody can actually board. The last physical connection to Britain's big gun naval warfare era. Every other major British warship from that period was scrapped. Belfast survived because expensive ships doing important missions become historically significant ships worth preserving. The final accounting: £13.1 million invested across 27 years, produced service from 1939 to 1963, combat effectiveness from Battle of North Cape through Korean War, and preservation value from 1971 to present. Belfast proved expensive capability deployed correctly justifies expensive investment. She validated the town-class design philosophy that maximizing capability within treaty limits produced optimal return on investment. She demonstrated that proper maintenance and modernization keep expensive platforms relevant across decades. Most importantly, Belfast showed that ships justifying their cost during service become ships justifying preservation after service. The cruiser that cost as much as 26 destroyers now educates millions about why navies built expensive cruisers, because missions requiring heavy capability demand heavy ships. Belfast remains moored in London, the last survivor of Britain's big gun cruiser fleet, permanent testament to the economics of capability-based naval design.